You're welcome back. At this time when Nigerians are eager and anxiously awaiting the National Conference to come up with lasting resolutions that will correct the perceived structural imbalances in the system and give every Nigerian a country they can be proud of, the discordant themes echoing from that hallowed chamber is worrisome, and Nigerians are worried. And this day we have in the house, of course in the studio, distinguished members of the National Conference who are here to discuss the topic and matters arising at the National Conference. I'm privileged to have in the studio Dr. Kunle Olajide, Elder Statesman from Ekiti, Secretary, Yoruba Delegates 2014 National Conference. Sir, it's nice having you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for the
Thank you for coming. And of course, we have His Excellency Ambassador Vincent Sunny Okobi, Diaspora Constituency. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Nice having you.
Thank you.
And of course, we also have distinguished Senator Ibrahim Mantu, CFR, former Deputy President of the Senate, 2001 to 2007, and currently a member of the National Confab representing North Central Zone. Distinguished. Nice having you.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
I want to start right with you, sir.
All right.
The Northern Delegate issued a release yesterday, signed by Alhaji Ibrahim Kumasi and retired General Jeremiah Hussein, distancing themselves from the draft constitution and the bills that were circulated at the National Conference, saying they contain some extraneous issues. What's your take on that, sir? What's happening?
Well, quite frankly, any document or any press conference addressed by Alhaji Ibrahim Kumasi, who is the chairman of the ACF, and General Jeremiah Hussein, who used to be the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the ACF, will be seen to be the position of the Northern Delegates. But I'm also a Northerner. I think what I will say here is that they were being preemptive because they did not perhaps have the opportunity of going through the document clause by clause to see if some clauses have been smuggled into the draft constitution, which were not part of what was actually resolved at the plenary. The fact is that for me, as a lawmaker and as a seasoned presiding officer, I did not see anything wrong with that because I know that even from the beginning of this conference, that the report of the conference will eventually metamorphose into a constitution, because most of the things that we did have to do with amendment of the constitution. And so what the Secretariat did is to fast track the process by trying to sort of make sure that the report of this conference, the deliberation of this particular conference, does not go the way of the previous ones. In other words, being thrown into the dustbin of history. And so I think that what the Secretariat has done demands commendation from well-meaning people, and particularly those who have had the opportunity to go through the document. I have had the opportunity to go through the document, and I have not seen anything that was actually smuggled into that document, which is contrary to what we actually agreed at the preliminary. But let me say this before I round up. It is very important for us to know that perhaps it was the heading of that particular document that may have given rise to this kind of anxiety and what do I say? Preemptive action. That's right. Because you see, one, they said draft constitution. And in fact, there were two versions of that constitution. One that was bounded had the 1999 constitution and the amendments. Another one was not bounded, and they said draft constitution 2014, which connotes that we are coming out with a brand new constitution. But that is not the case. All over the world, constitutions are amended. So what actually should have been the heading of that document is proposed amendment constitutions based on the resolutions of the Confab. And that is what actually the chairman of the Confab corrected yesterday. He said these are proposed amendments to the 1999 Constitution based on the resolutions that have been passed at the plenary by the Confab delegates.
Thank you very much, sir.
So that was actually put to rest with the explanation of the chairman, and I don't think now that there's anybody again who is thinking that somebody wanted to smuggle something or any bad motive from any court.
Into the draft constitution.
To the contrary, I think that we should actually give a definite round of ovation to the Secretariat for the job well done and for being preemptive that, look, if we don't reduce the load work, if we send this report to the government, it may go the way the others have gone. So let us now fast track the process by also submitting to them a draft constitution, which they will just send to the National Assembly by way of an executive bill for consideration at the National Assembly.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Ambassador Okobi.
Yes.
Have you gone through the draft constitution?
Definitely.
Do you agree that everything in that draft constitution are in tandem or represent what you agreed on?
Let me just take one step backwards. I told you, we just came back from Washington, where another historic event took place. African heads of state, 50-some of them, met with President Obama. And at the inception, when it was first muted, there was a lot of criticisms. But at the end of it all, everybody came smiling. And what they were asking was, why didn't this come earlier than now? Because they were so happy that this is the case. I think that I looked at this conference in the same light. Don't forget, there had been a lot of controversy about this whole confab. But the minute we started being true to ourselves, for 4 months, we opened up a Pandora's of areas that we had never talked about in the past. And people were really coming together, saying that maybe we have now come to the point where we have to move forward. So quite frankly, I was taken aback when that impression was given. Because as Senator Mantu said, I think the management deserves a lot of commendation for the way they have analytically, the methodology by which they came up with what they came up. I was expecting that we would just come and give them a lot of congratulations for the way they handled it. You know, because when you have a situation of this nature, you have to ask yourself, what is the objective? I think this was what the president had in mind when he put together this whole confab. We have come 100 years. Before we go another 100 years, let us have a roadmap that will guide us. I think we'll be deceiving ourselves, with all humility, we'll be deceiving ourselves if anybody in that confab who has been there for 4 months, if he doesn't know that at the end of the road there was going to be a constitution, because in any of those committees, 20-some committees, references were made time and time again to what was wrong with the constitution. And my dear brother, in management, when you have an assignment of that nature, you move forward. What was going to be the next line of action? Are we going to tell the president, okay, with all that, you now go and develop, you know? Senator Mantu said, yes, the title was, well, okay, but you never judge a book by its cover.
Thank you very much,
if
sir.
they had read what was in that, I'm sure when we go in today, they're going to be full of apologies for what has been disseminated to us yesterday.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Dr. Kunle Olajide, will you attribute this development to mistrust along the divides of the southern and northern divides at the confab?
Yes, to a very large extent. This mindset has been there for quite a while. Suspicion, a lot of suspicion, and so on. And this was why, if you had the opportunity of listening to the president's inaugural address, at length he went to stressing the importance of patriotism, looking at Nigeria as a corporate body, not anybody coming here solely to come and advance your sectional interest. He said we should put Nigeria above all other interests. And coming from the Southwest as I do, we titled our own agenda to the conference, Southwest Contribution, not Southwest Agenda, its contribution to 2014 National Conference, moving Nigeria forward But a lot of people still harbor this mindset and this suspicion. And if you harbor suspicion for a long time, you become very paranoid. When you see anything, you are very suspicious before even opening it at all. You can even get to a state that you begin to run from your shadow when you become very paranoid. It is a level of mistrust. Because if anybody spent time looking through the document, he will realize that all that was done was merely bringing our resolutions into the 1999 Constitution, replacing the areas that we suggested replacement amendment and calling it 2014 draft Constitutional Conference. There was nothing new at all. Nothing new.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Distinguished Senator Ibrahim Mantu, issues like state creation, revenue allocation formula, and of course, listing of local government constitution were those contentious issues generated so much anxiety and of course suspicion. Have you resolved those issues?
Well, incidentally, I happen to be a member of the devolution committee, which was handling all those issues you're asking me a question about. We made recommendations from our committee because we were unable to actually reach a consensus. We were unable to reach a consensus because not everybody in the committee agreed on the derivation formula, particularly the 13%. But everybody, except one, agreed that since we're going to be contentious, we should leave it as it is, and we take it to the plenary. So because there are other committees also who were also dealing with a similar issue. So let us see the wisdom that may come from other committees dealing with the same issue. Okay. And if their own is superior to ours, we adopt whatever is superior in the interest of Nigeria. And we took it that way. But up to this moment, at the plenary too, we were unable to resolve on that 13%. So we say, well, fine. Whatever we recommend, we send it back to government. At least we have expressed our views on the issue. Government will read our views, and then government will not take a decision as they deem fit. So that's where we left it. The issue of local government creation, we believe that in a proper federal system, the issue of local government is actually the responsibility of the states. Everywhere in the world, local governments are actually controlled at the local level, and they are not a part. I mean, they are not a federating unit of the federation, in short. So we felt that, look, we must advance our federal system to what actually obtains in advanced democracies. We should now leave the responsibility of local government management and creation of local government to the states so that they can handle it effectively. Even right now as it is, where the local government is the third tier of government. The intention that we had, because incidentally I was a co-sponsor of the bill that created the amendments on this local government during our time. Unfortunately, the intention is not actually being carried. The spirit behind it, that okay, let the federal government send money to the states so that the state will now add their own to what has been sent by the federal government, so that the local government will now have fat resources to develop the localities in which it is. Now the money goes to the state. The state government does not even contribute its own quota to that one in the joint account. They consume what is taken by they control and they manage what is actually sent by the federal government. And in some cases, the local government only get salaries to go and pay their workers. And the rest of the money is managed by the state the way they like it. And so there has been so much abuse on that. Again, there are so many disparities. You know, one cannot understand the yardstick which they use in creating the local governments. You know, some states may have 20 million people, and then they have 20.
But I want to ask you, sir, in an ideal federalism, where we adhere strictly to the tenets of federalism, what should obtain? Should local government be appendages to state?
That's what I'm saying.
Or
no.
a distinct tier of government in an ideal federalism?
No, it shouldn't be a distinct tier of government at all. Okay. In an ideal federalism, there are two federating units, the states and the federal. Right? In an ideal federalism. And that is why we said that we should practice ideal federalism. Let us take the issue of local government management to the state governments so that they can decide to create as many local governments as they wish. Like. You know, so it's their business. Okay. But today, it is very difficult to create additional local government because it is in the Constitution, all the local governments are
listed in
the Constitution. And for that reason, for you to make any amendment, it must go through the due process of constitutional amendment, which means 2/3 of the two houses of the Assembly, of the National Assembly, and then, of course, 2/3 of the states of the Federation. And because those people who are controlling the states are the beneficiaries of what is going to the local government, they will never allow the State House Assembly to endorse that. So never a time in history shall we see any changes in the local government arrangement if we leave it the way it is today. But let us now leave it to them at the local level, and then whatever money used to go there will now be added to the responsibility of the state, and then, we'll leave it to them.
Yeah, thank you, bro. Your Excellency, distinguished senator just said that the issue of devolution of power, as it affects revenue allocation formula, was pushed back to government because they couldn't reach its consensus. One of the issues that led to this national conference taking place is revenue allocation formula, devolution of power. Don't you think it's like pushing the problem back to government?
I don't think so. I think with the spirit with which we have gone through this whole exercise, it could have been resolved. It could have been resolved, and I think we've given the presidency all the ammunition it needs to take a look at this and then come up with a definite line of action. There have been mistakes in the past. We all know it. In fact, one of our colleagues on the floor said that most of these LGAs were created by fiat, by military fiat. And as such, there isn't any equity in this creation. And all you're saying is, if everyone is going to be feeding from this same umbilical cord from the federal, let us have a rethink and see how this can be resolved. And I'm sure if they had not come up with these, preemptive ideas, as my honorable colleague has said, these are issues that we could have resolved very easily. Now, listen, how come that for this, we should reduce the disparity amongst us as much as possible. And I think that 19 out of 20 or 19 out of 21 is not a bad pass mark, that we couldn't have still gone through with this and pat ourselves on the back for a job well done. So even that will come to pass. It will be resolved.
Thank you very much. Dr. Olajide, sir, if you take a look at the issues at stake and the tension that the latest development has generated, do you see Confab coming to a consensus and agreement at the end of the day?
I'm surprised what we mean by the end of the day. We have come to consensus. We have agreed on all the issues. In fact, I was going to add a word to what Senator Mantu and Ambassador Okobi said. As regards this derivation thing, we agreed. It's only we disagreed on the percentages. There is no delegate who does not agree that we must increase derivation. Senator Mantu forgot to mention that he headed the committee that worked on this thing about how many years ago, and they suggested 18 or 17% derivation. So we agreed that derivation must be increased. It is the fixing of the percentages
that created the problem.
Yes, that we have said the federal government should sort out. And in any case, if you remember what we have in the Constitution now, it is derivation, it should not be less than 13. In other words, it does not even fix it at 13. It said it should not be less, so it can be more. And now the conference has agreed that it should be more. But what percentage should it be? And that is where we think we need perhaps the government to look at it and set up a technical committee, reduce these percentages to figures, and then come and give a definite percentage.
Okay, sir.
So I don't think there is any, we have agreed on all the issues. So we did not vote at all.
On the issues. Okay, what is something?
Yes, I just want to add that as problematic as it must have been,
It appears to have been.
Let us not forget that all through this conference there has been one realization. The amount of minerals that each state of this country has.
That are bound across the length and breadth.
Across the length and breadth of this country. I think we have all now realized that we must move away from oil. It's a deception. And if we can develop what we all have under our ground, believe me, we will not be going through this process of what percentage from what? From what? From one diminishing asset?
Thank you very much.
I think if anything has come up, we have now said, let us go back to the drawing boards and see how we can get alternative sources of revenue accruing to the federal government.
Sir,
and if I may just add,
Sir.
the question of my constituency, which gets more money in this country to the tune of over $22 billion every year.
Diaspora Constituency?
The Diaspora Constituency, which goes to families and villages in the development of this country without any tax to the government. More than all the aid that is coming from both sides of the Atlantic, America and Europe. The diaspora is contributing so much to the development of this nation, but we have completely ignored it. So while we are thinking of just sharing, let us think of how we can bake a bigger cake so that we can all
Able to share and share enough.
Exactly.
Distinguished Senator.
Yeah, well, before we come to making a bigger,
A bigger cake.
I would like to, because this is the issue that we have, perhaps most of you media people like to hammer on, this derivation that we have not been able to agree upon. I want to tell you that we have done a very good job and we have successfully dealt with the issue, because look, like you said rightly, there are so many recommendations. Some they wanted the people who wanted 50%, some were recommended 21.5%. My committee before recommended 18%, and we have all agreed that it should be added. But the point I want to tell you is that I want to justify why it has been left like the way it is. The federal government wears the cap; it knows where it pinches. They now have to work out the percentage which can be increased, and at the same time the states can remain, because most of the states are relying heavily on the statutory allocations. If today you don't give them anything, I don't know how many states will survive apart from Lagos and maybe one or two. Yeah. So that is why we said, look, let's go back to the government, because they are in a better position to see what percentage can be added, and still the states can still survive.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Distinguished Senator, I wish I could continue having a distinguished panelist like this, but my time is against me, and I've got the directors and is on my neck. Well, viewers, the topic has been the latest development, and of course, the issue of suspicions and anxieties emanating from the National Confab, and we'll be privileged to have distinguished members of the National Conference who have been here, and of course, they have dealt with the issue as appropriate. It's my pleasure to once again introduce and acknowledge Dr. Kunle Olajide.
Thank you very much.
Statement from Ekiti State. It's nice having you, sir. And I'd love to shake you, but this is the Ebola shake now. And of course, His Excellency Ambassador Vincent Okobi from Diaspora Constituency. It's nice having you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks
so
for coming.
much.
And of course,
Senator
Ibrahim Mantu, one-time Deputy President of the Federal Republic, Senate of the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thanks for coming, sir. It's nice having you.